So I've drawn over 1,000 manga pages and I've learned a lot along the way. Here's where I'd start if I was doing it all over again. Hi everyone, I'm Midnight Cross. I'm the creator of the manga series Having Faith, which is a graphic novel inspired by manga. Volume 1 has over 500 pages and Volume 2 is upcoming and also has over 500 pages. So I've now officially drawn over 1,000 manga pages and I've learned a lot about what it really means to create a manga. And if I was starting it all over again from the very beginning, there are a lot of things that I wish I knew at the beginning that I did not know that I had to learn through the process. So today, if you are beginning your own manga series, you might feel like it's a really daunting prospect. So I want to share with you the tips that I wish I knew when I was first starting out, which would have really helped me in the long run. So the very first thing that I wish I knew was more about creating a story plan. Initially, I planned my story using the classic 6-step story structure, which is really good as well. However, if I were doing it all over again, I would have used the Kishotenketsu structure, which is more commonly used in manga and Japanese literature. So the classic 6-step story structure is more used in Western novel writing, and it contains the beginning, inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. And the Kishotenketsu style has Ki, which is the introduction, Sho, the development, Ten, the twist, and Ketsu, which is the resolution. Now this can also be expanded upon, and this simple structure is the origin for many Japanese manga and anime. So in learning more about how to actually create manga and this more authentic style, if I was starting all over again, I would have worked with this style and used that to really build my story upon it. And I really think that it would have made the process a whole lot more simpler, and it would have meant that it was easier to plan all of the chapters in the long run. Now, the second thing that I wish I really knew before beginning my series, and that I would recommend for beginners, is to develop proper storyboards. The thing that is most difficult about creating a manga is there's actually two kinds of editing processes. See, when you begin creating a novel, you are essentially looking at writing the novel and then editing the novel. Now, it's not to say that writing a novel is necessarily easier, but when you're creating a manga, there's actually another editing process. You're not only writing the script and planning it, but you are then also editing the pages and editing the storyboards. Essentially, if you don't create good storyboards at the beginning, then it will mean that you may have to do more editing work later. If you've spent the time drawing really detailed manga pages, editing like that can be a really detailed and time-consuming process. In the beginning, when I was creating my manga, I didn't understand fully the full storyboarding process, and I especially noticed this in book 1. I would get really excited about a particular scene and begin creating that scene, but not necessarily plan ahead. And planning ahead is really essential when you begin creating a manga. So if I was just starting out, again, I would recommend writing the script and planning your storyboards first. Draw a sketch of all of the pages you want to include. And this is what I did in book 2 of Having Faith, and this made the process much more streamlined. I was able to write the script and prepare all of the storyboards and actually read through it before I began drawing it. So essentially the whole story is prepared and planned out before you actually begin creating it. And this is not to say that you can't make changes later, but it does mean that you know what kind of direction your story is going to be taking, so it is easier to then make those adjustments and know that you're not going to end up with a plot hole later on. So make your storyboards, draw little sketches, add your text on top, and read through the rough draft first. And if you're happy with the rough draft and you're happy with the direction of your story, and you feel like you can realistically create this, then you can move on to the drawing process with more confidence. The third thing is finding the style first. Take time and learn to draw and learn your own style before settling on what style you want to work with. Creating a manga or any visual form of storytelling is a really big time commitment. So, for example, if you're creating a webcomic, you would want to ensure that you have a consistent style before you begin creating it. Style is not only about how it looks visually as an artist. Obviously, when you have readers reading your book, you want them to be able to recognize your visual style. But it's not only that, it's also about, can you realistically dedicate time to creating this in this style? If the answer is no, if it takes too long to draw each page, think about ways you can simplify your style to make it a lot easier for you. You need to make sure it is easy enough for you to draw this over and over again. Now, if you're drawing it digitally, I'll let you in on my secret, which speeds up my process greatly. And I didn't know this at the start. Make templates. Save detailed pictures at different angles so you don't have to redraw them again from scratch. This saves me so much more time because I don't have to then redraw something that's really detailed. And I especially use this for backgrounds. I use it for some characters with really detailed outfits, and I use it for objects as well. Obviously, you don't want to do it all the time, otherwise your pages might look a bit stiff, but it really helps if I'm drawing something detailed. I can just pull up my file where I have all of my templates and resources that I've already drawn and put them into the page, and then I can add the details I need around those initial templates. It makes it a whole lot more simpler. So when you begin creating your manga, I recommend learning that shading and art style on one page first. Just draw one page and figure out what kind of style you can work with consistently. You don't need to use fancy screen tones and you don't need to make it overly detailed. Just learn how to make your pages look consistent. Now, another thing is that I recommend focusing on your page as a whole and not every single panel. Make sure you zoom out when you're working on your manga pages. You don't have to zoom out all the way, but if you're constantly zoomed right into your panel, then you may always be focused on a singular part of the page. So treat the entire page as the artwork, not every panel. Essentially, the page is the composition. Spend too long on one panel and the page will take a long time to complete. So I would suggest when you draw your page, this is a manga panel composition, add a highlight panel, the biggest and most important panel on the page, and pay less attention to the others. I know how important it is to make the page look good, but having a tiny panel, it does not need to take up all of your focus. So instead, use your focus on the panels that are most likely to be seen by the audience. Number 5 is avoid drawing out scenes. So when you begin creating your manga, avoid extending scenes for longer than they need to be. This was something that I struggled with a lot in my very first draft of Having Faith, and I actually went through an entire draft where I actually drew the whole thing first before I actually created the initial one. And that probably seems like a lot of work, but it did actually help me improve my art a lot. So when I did end up officially creating the first book of Having Faith, my artwork was at a much better level and I had a much better understanding of how to create a manga. And what's really interesting is even from the very first volume where I felt like I understood more, I also learned a lot from that and I was able to improve my process a lot by creating book 2 as well. So what I really mean is when I was creating my very first draft of Having Faith, I would extend a scene much longer than I had to be. There would be panels with reactions and there'd be panels with way more dialogue than was necessary for the scene. So this is why storyboarding is so important. As you storyboard, make sure you cut out sections that make the scene feel longer than it has to be. You don't need to show every character's reaction to every situation, and you also don't need to draw it out with a lot of unnecessary dialogue. So create your rough drafts first, read through it, and then cut out the parts or redraw the storyboards that seem to extend the scene longer than it really needs to be. I would also suggest knowing your page goal before you start. So authentic Japanese manga usually has a consistent page count of around 200 pages. And when you look at series that are coming out of Shonen Jump magazine, for example, these manga will usually have a very consistent page count of 200 pages, or around about that number. And these will usually comply with publishing regulations in that company. The publishers will determine how many pages each manga should have, and the manga creator will need to ensure that every chapter and all the pages they create lines up with that page goal. Now, this was something I didn't quite understand when I began creating my own series, which was why it ended up being 550 pages, not 200 pages. And in hindsight, if I were doing it again, I would make it 200 pages rather than 500. And I mean, I don't regret it. I'm very happy with how the final product looks for book 1, and I'm excited for book 2 as well, which will also have over 500 pages to match, so they'll both be 2 consistent books. But if you really want to create something that feels authentically manga styled and is a lot easier for you to create, then I would suggest finding a good page count goal that works for you and making sure you remain consistent with that page count goal. Decide on your publishing style early on, before you actually begin creating it. This is really important to keep in mind, as how you plan on publishing it will determine how you format your manga. If you determine that you want to self-publish your manga, which is what I did for Having Faith, I decided I would self-publish it. You cannot later go back and decide to publish it, because most traditional publishers want first publishing rights. They want to be able to be the first one to publish your book. Now, this is not always the case, and there are many books that were self-published that do end up getting published officially. But if you have a physical copy of your book and you are intending to self-publish it, then just keep in mind that it will likely be a lot more difficult if you do want to eventually traditionally publish it. I wanted to self-publish mine because I had a very specific way of how I wanted it to look, and I didn't want anyone to be able to tell me how I should design it or edit my pages. And I understand that self-publishing is a more difficult road because you need to market it and you need to promote it yourself, but overall I'm really happy with the fact that I decided that, because I was able to then tell the story in the way I want to tell my story. But for other people, they may want to traditionally publish it. And if you want to traditionally publish your manga, then what you would need to do is you need to look at the companies you might be interested in, and just know that manga publishing is different from Western style publishing. When you are publishing in America, for example, you're more likely to then reach out to the company directly, include your cover letter, and include a draft of your manga or comic, likely including some storyboard pages and likely including a portion of your script. But in Japanese manga publishing, this is not the same. Usually in Japan, you could send your manga directly to the company in Japanese, or if you only speak English, you may be able to send your manga to a manga competition, which is more likely how you will be published traditionally if you want to go an authentic manga route. In this case, you may want to look at manga competitions like Silent Manga Audition, create your manga one-shot and then send it in, and this may give you a better chance of getting your manga noticed and potentially published. And the more you do that, the more you will be able to put yourself out there as a manga author. Even if you're not choosing a self-published or traditional published path, and instead you're choosing more of a webcomic or a web manga path, the formatting is still going to be really different. So essentially what I mean by all this is know the formatting before you start. For example, an authentic manga page style is 5 inches by 7.5 inches. So all of my pages are in this size dimension. And in book 1, I did not format them correctly, so I had to resize all of my pages, which was a really tedious process. And now with book 2, I was able to set that page dimension early on, so I'm not going to have to go back and reformat those pages later. So whether you are self-publishing, whether you want to try traditional publishing, or if you plan on releasing it as a web manga, think about how you should format your pages first before you begin, so you don't have to have the time-consuming task of reformatting and editing those pages later on. And number 8 is understand how many pages you can realistically draw. A manga is a really big time commitment, and I know that very well myself. So if you aren't sure, set smaller goals first. You can always start with a one-shot manga, which is usually around 30 pages or even more or less, and then you can start with that and see if you like creating manga, see if you like your style, see if you like your style of script writing and storyboarding and planning. Learn a good system first before you approach a bigger project. You could even start a smaller web manga or a web comic and see if you like doing it. initially having faith was actually a test before working on a bigger series, which is surprising. You might think that 1,000 pages is quite a lot, but having faith initially was something that I really wanted to try out. I wanted to see if I liked the process of creating manga. I wanted to really learn my own art and storytelling style, and that is what I did. And so with book 1, I really learned a lot, and with book 2, I was able to really take what I'd learned and put it into practice. So I'm really excited for book 2, which will be releasing this year, and I look forward to sharing more about it with you online and through my YouTube channel as well. So thank you so much for joining me in today's video, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know what kind of manga project you're working on, because I would love to hear your thoughts, and I'm sure others would love to hear your thoughts too. Visit my website, midnightcross.com, for resources, templates, and workbooks that can help you to level up your story. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!